PowerPoint. So we're talking about the integumentary system. That's the cutaneous membrane that covers our body. It's made up of epidermis, dermis, accessory structures such as sweat glands, fingernails. The subcutaneous layer is the hypodermis. It's where hypodermic needles release their contents. So what does the integument do? Protects us, regulates temperature, makes vitamin D, senses heat, touch, pain, excretes waste and secretes sweat, which contains sodium chloride and some waste materials. So this is what it looks like. We'll have diagrams similar to this on WebAssign. So the first layer is the epidermis, second layer the dermis, and the subcutaneous layer. Subcutaneous meaning underneath the cutaneous layer. So notice that the epidermis is a very thin layer. Notice that the epidermis, as the skin grows and hairs are produced, the epidermis lines the outside layer of the hair follicles. This is an erecti pilli muscle. Every time we get goosebumps, this is the reason, the contraction of each of these muscles. Goosebumps occurs to allow the hair to store more heat next to the body. I don't know whether those of you who shave your legs get cold. Just curious. Okay, so the hair shaft is called the hair root inside the epidermis and dermis. Sweat glands release their sweat right here. The epidermal ridge is the projection of the epidermis into the dermis. It's similar to little fingers of the epidermis grabbing the dermis. The dermal papilla are the little fingers of the dermis tissue grabbing the epidermis. The sebaceous gland is a gland that is associated with hair follicles that secretes sebum, a waxy oily material. Waxy material that waterproofs the hairs and the skin. The sweat duct gland purpose is to release sweat to do evaporative cooling. Touch and pressure receptors, these particular ones in the middle of the dermis are called Pacinian corpuscles. These are called Meissner's corpuscles. So the hair follicle is the base of the hair sheath. The hair follicle is where the hair cells are produced, and that's the reason hair grows, because there's active division of cells and production of more cells in the hair follicle. Notice that each hair follicle has nerves, and it has veins and arteries. Arteries and veins flow throughout the hypodermis. They send other vessels, veins and arteries into just below the epidermis. The epidermis is closely packed cells. There are no blood vessels, no nerves, no connective tissue in the epidermis. Okay? As much fat in the hypodermis to insulate the skin, to make sure when it's cold outside, this helps insulate the skin of every one of us to keep us warm. Okay, so look at this diagram. We'll refer to all of these structures. So the epidermis is stratified squamous epithelium. That means that it is multiple layers. We'll enumerate or identify the multiple layers of thick skin, which will have 5 layers. Thick skin is on the palms and the soles. The thin skin is on the rest of the body. So if we look at the epidermis on the palms, on your, upturned palms and your bottom of your feet, you'll have 5 layers. Okay, the 5 layers are called, starting from the base of the cells just above the dermis, is the stratum germinativum. The stratum germinativum has actively growing cells that divide and grow. The stratum spinosum is just on top of the stratum germinativum. It contains spikes. The granulosum is where cells continue to grow, and they're full of granules depending upon how much pigment you have in your cells. The stratum lucidum only occurs in thick skin on the palms and the soles, and it is usually a little clear layer in between the stratum corneum and the stratum granulosum. Remember, it only occurs in the palms and the soles of the feet. Stratum corneum is cells that are dying. There's many, many layers of the stratum corneum, and it is waterproofed by the protein keratin. So here's a microscopic view of the skin, the epidermis of the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. Notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. The basement membrane is the supporting layer that is just below the stratum germinativum. Cells are here actively growing. These are myelin producing cells, not myelin, melanocytes, melanin. Melanin is a dark pigment that when you get sunburn, that's why you get darker skin, because the melanin from the melanocytes is trying to block that UV radiation and to stop you from burning too badly. When I grew up, we didn't have suntan lotion, so I can remember being quite burned, particularly when I visited my cousins in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. So the stratum granulosum has granules, often granules from melanocytes. The stratum lucidum is the thin layer in between the stratum corneum and the stratum granulosum. It often appears a little bigger than this, and it's clear. So these are the 5 layers of the epidermis in the soles of the feet and the palms of the hand. So what does the stratum germinativum do? There are stem cells. It's the bottom layer. These cells divide and they grow. Melanocytes produce melanin, a dark pigment, which varies on person to person because there's really only one human race. Race is a sociological construct. We're all members of the same human race. Be kind, be compassionate, be nice to all people. The stratum spinosum is the spiny layer just above the stratum germinativum. It's where cells are continuing to grow. The stratum granulosum is not growing. I may have said that wrong, but so that's the stratum granulosum has granules of melanin and is producing keratin granules that will ultimately, the protein will flow into the dead stratum corneum cells and help waterproof the skin and hold the stratum corneum together. Stratum corneum is what you can touch with your fingers. These are flattened squamous dead cells. There's a lot of keratin. You can also say the stratum Corneum is cornified. It's tough, water-resistant protein. Melanocytes make melanin, which is a dark pigment. It provides UV protection and gives skin reddish brown to brown black color. Keratin is another pigment that, with melanin, can determine your skin color, which again is just a variation from human to human. And there's hemoglobin present in blood, so that influences the amount of pigments in the cutaneous membrane of the skin. These melanocytes produce melanin pigment, and it's released from the cell, and it's there to contribute to the color of your skin and also to protect from UV radiation. Let's stop there and let's go back to stop recording. Stop recording.